live.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, 2:34. Oh.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.
I'm going to connect us to my page too, and I'm going to turn on our comments.
Awesome. Happy Saturday.
I'm going to connect us. Oh man, what's on? Oh, sorry, I had the volume up on my
That's okay.
iPad because
Isn't it funny how they're all like on different frequencies, like
yeah, I'm like, why do I hear myself talking right now?
Yeah.
Okay. We're set.
Awesome.
So today we're going to talk about funding fix and flip deals. Maybe other kinds of deals too. Not necessarily only fix and flip, but the traditional way that we fund a fix and flip. I think even a couple episodes ago, I think someone in the comments asked us about funding, if I remember correctly. So,
yeah, I think it was Scott. He was for a hard money loan.
Yeah.
So a lot of us still use.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the ins and outs of that today and how we've done our deals. So we welcome any questions in the comments section, which I have turned on and should be able to see theoretically.
Yeah, we're not busy talking. Yeah.
Cool. So let's see here. Where should we begin? So we started our business, both Angie and I, mainly wholesaling. And then after kind of getting the ins and outs of that, like under our belt, and after we had a real good understanding of how that worked, we started realizing that, taking these deals that we would typically wholesale to another flipper was something that we were ready to start looking at doing ourselves, because we were leaving money on the table with deals. So yeah, I mean, yes, you can make good assignment fees, especially when the market's good. A couple of years ago, we were in a market cycle where we had a lot of wholesale deals still available, and the discounts were pretty decent. So we were able to do well on assignment fees. But you have to constantly be turning, right? And if you're wholesaling correctly, your assignment fees shouldn't be huge. There needs to be meat on the bone so that whoever you're assigning it to is going to be able to flip that property, or maybe they're buying it for rental. They may not necessarily be buying it specifically for a flip, but the idea is that because these properties are typically distressed, we want to make sure that there's enough space there for whoever is investing in it to put their money in and still be able to get a return. So from there, you realize when you see, right? So we started watching what the people were doing with the properties that we were assigning, and we were able to see the kind of profits that they were making. And so we thought to ourselves, okay, it's time to level up and start looking at how we break into that side of the business. And a big piece of how you break into that side of the business is having available funding. Because it costs money to do a fix and flip. And that can be a little bit, it can feel overwhelming at first. And it can feel like, how in the world do I get, $50,000, $100,000 to do a flip?
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to talk about the ins and outs of how that came to fruition for us. And now it's firmly in our tool belt, so that we have, now that we have all our resources lined up, we can utilize them anytime we come across the property that looks like it's going to be a good flip.
Yeah. And I think also, I mean, a lot has to do with, we've talked about this too before, that your reputation and the way you work with other folks has a lot to do with building your relationships with hard money lenders and private lenders. Um, I know that with us, when we decided that, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and jump in and do a flip and see what it's like, we had people that could vouch for us because they had borrowed money from a particular hard money lender. Um, and then once I think you start to build that relationship, then other people start to notice, like, oh, okay, they're flipping now, so they are a good risk, not necessarily a bad risk,
Right.
because they've been successful with a project or whatever it may be. But again, a lot of it, mostly, I think everything has to do with the way that you work and the respect and the integrity that you have for the projects that you're doing.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So we started in with mentors that we've talked about in many episodes. And because they were a few years ahead of us, they had some connections and some resources that we were able to tap into when it was time to get into doing flips. Um, so the hard money resource was a really big one because hard money lenders are in the business of doing fast transactions, being able to deposit that money quickly so that you can close on a property quickly. And they also are there to fund projects that have a little bit faster turnaround time, right?
Right.
With hard money, it's not something that's ideal to hang on to for, if you have a project that's going to be like a year long thing.
Right.
Um, Usually the loan duration is 6 months or less, in fact. And so, because of the convenience of it and because of the fast availability of it, one of the things with hard money lenders is they're very careful at assessing risk because they don't want to go do a 24-hour quick close and go deposit money to somebody who isn't going to be respectful of that money and handle it properly, right? So they need to vet their clientele thoroughly. And the other thing is that, looking at interest rates, you have to pay a premium to have access to money that quickly. And so it's just like anything else, right? If you want something and you're looking for super fast turnaround time and you're looking for white glove treatment, you're going to pay for that. And so, similar thing with hard money, you're going to be expected to pay higher interest rates because of the convenience of it and because of the how fast it is, and because of the risk that the lender is taking on you. Because like if any of you have purchased your own home and you have a mortgage, you know how long that lender takes to vet you. It takes forever. Like you have to get pre-qualified, then you go get the house, then it's 30 to 45 days that they're still running stats on you, even though you were pre-qualified in the first place. So if you think about the difference between that and then a hard money lender who is basically looking at pictures of a property online, they typically do not go visit the property. And then they are making a decision in 24 to 48 hours based on your business track record and the property that you've chosen. That's fairly high risk. They don't have all that time that a traditional lender has to make sure that they're dealing with a very low risk individual.
Right.
So,
Because I think they base it obviously on the asset as well. So,
absolutely.
so they look at what kind of a project is it? Can it be really, like, can it be pulled off? Because I know that there's been where I've seen some of the lenders have said, not necessarily no to me, but I've seen them say no to other folks where the project doesn't look like it's a stable project or that project can produce the amount of money that they foresee.
Yes.
So you definitely have to, so that's basically what they are vouching that, or trusting that you're going to do, that you're going to do well on this project so that they get their money back.
Absolutely. And they're in the business of understanding real estate transactions. And so when you give them your stats on the asset itself that you're purchasing, they're going to verify that. So it can't be this like pie in the sky, oh, well, this neighborhood, everything else in the neighborhood sells for about 250, but we think we can get 325 for this particular house because we're going to do it up really nice. Like, that's not how flipping works. And hard money lenders know that that's not how flipping works. So they're going to look at what is going on transactionally in the area. And they're only going to, go ahead and fund your deal if your numbers are right. So coming into it, not only with a good reputation, but part of what creates your reputation is knowing how to run your numbers. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's not about it's not about what you think you can do to make a buyer fall in love with it. It's about, what does the data say?
Mm-hmm.
The data in the neighborhood says every house sells within X amount, and you're within that amount, and you can show them this is why you're within that amount, then they feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're not right about that, that's going to be a huge obstacle that you'll need to go back and work on. And so track record is a big deal. If you come in brand new, it's not that they won't lend to you if you've never done a flip before. However, you are going to be looking at potentially far higher interest rates than someone who already has an established business, because you're higher risk, right? They need to see you perform before they're going to give you a discount on interest rates. And they may do things like ask for a larger down payment. They may ask you for quite a bit more information your first, couple of projects if you don't have someone to vouch for you.
Yeah.
We were in a great position because since our mentors already had an existing relationship with a lender and their track record was quite good, what we decided to do was partner with them inside of an LLC, so that when we came through with our new LLC and the new business that our mentors were attached to, then they could come in and say, these are our partners that we're doing this project with. But the lender had already experienced their personal track record. And so them bringing new people in partnered was not a scary thing to the lender. And so that enabled us to get good interest rates right off the bat, which was important to our projects, right? And enabled us to tap into getting that money quickly, and allowed us to tap into other resources also from that lender.
Yeah.
So like the lender was able to say, oh, this is who we prefer for insurance. And bam, now we have an insurance resource, and things like that. So having that mentorship and having that referral was really, really good for us when we first started flipping.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, and even now, so then because you're building your track record, and it's not only, one lender. I mean, there's a variety of lenders within the Valley. There's a few of us that a lot of us work with, the Capital Fund one, and, Bench Equity and Level 4 and all those guys, the Cactus. There's a ton of hard money lenders out there, and they're all really, really good. But I think also you yourself start to then feel comfortable with your certain list of hard money lenders as well. Some folks are easier to work with. Some people are really hard to work with, but it's okay because they trust me to do my project. But I have to say, I think as long as, and what I really do want to drive home is that when you're doing this and as you're working with all of these different hard money lenders, your professionalism will speak volumes if you do exactly what they require you to do. So the reporting system, because you might be, let's say you do get funded, and there's a sort of a draw system that you're able to have rehab funds for your particular project. You don't just willy-nilly ask for money. Like, you have to show the work that you've done. You have to document it, and obviously there's an inspection. You have to be there for those certain kinds of inspections, explain things, make it as easy as possible for that hard money lender to work with you, so that in the end, once you're done and the next project comes along, they don't have like ifs or buts about working with you, because they know that you will do everything on your end to make it a really sustainable and just kind of easy systemized process when you work with them. I know that I've sometimes I think I've annoyed some of the hard money lenders because I document a lot of things. But I just want to make sure that they know that we have our ducks in a row and that we are doing everything to the best of our abilities, and that we're working really hard, and they understand that. I know that sometimes some of my documentation might be a little bit overkill, but I'm not trying to be, a shyster or some trying to, take money that's not supposed to be mine.
Right.
So you have to just work really honestly. You just do the best work that you can.
Yeah, it's really, really important because you have to remember, I've definitely seen people who come into the fix and flip game and they come in with this sort of bravado that like the resources that they're working with owe them somehow. You can't come with that kind of attitude to a hard money lender because the thing is, they are not, they're doing you a favor essentially. They're not working for you. They're not your client, it's the other way around. And they're providing a resource that is precious.
Yeah.
So you need to treat that relationship and you need to treat the project as such. And there's going to be like, you would need to use different lenders potentially for different projects, right? So like we have one lender that we use all the time that does not offer construction loans. That is just not what they do. So we might use them to purchase the property and they can do things quickly and all of that. And, we can close super fast. And then we may use private funds, which we'll talk about shortly, for our rehab. And depending on what the project looks like when you run the numbers, in some cases that is more affordable and it makes sense to do it that way depending on what kind of project you're looking at.
Yeah.
If you're looking potentially at more of an extensive project, and maybe you need a larger amount of private funds that are harder to secure, or that you're getting a better interest rate through the hard money lender that does construction loans, then you're going to use a different lender that allows construction loans. But if you do that, that lender also has a different set of rules attached. So like Angie was saying, there's a draw system. If you need $50,000 to do the rehab, they don't just hand you $50,000 and you get to do it. You have to take it out in draws. And so they might give you $10,000 to start with. And then you take that and you do the work and you document your work. And then they have an inspector that comes and makes sure that that work is being done, that it's done properly, and that it's what you said was going to be done with those funds. And if you had to do something else for some reason, as long as it was documented, so say you had planned to do such and such, but you found out that there was a plumbing issue and you had to handle the plumbing issue before you can do this other thing. As long as you can document that and the inspector can make sense of it, that's totally fine. But that also means your project management skills need to be on point, right? Because you have to be able to make sure that all of this is organized properly, documented properly, and that you're able to let them see what they need to see to continue to let your project move forward.
Right.
Because if you don't, they will not release funds. And now your project timeline is affected, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You also need to be careful with your contractors and your trades. We did a flip a couple of years ago, and we used a construction loan with a draw system, and we kept running into issues with our contractor because he would say, this is the plan for the next 2 weeks. And we would say, okay, great. And then he would just decide that he wanted to do everything in a different order and change it all up. And then he would get mad when the inspector would come and say, well, you didn't do anything that you said you were going to do. And he often wouldn't tell us that he changed trajectory, so we couldn't go in and change our documentation. It would always be when the inspector comes and says, you didn't do anything that you said you were going to do. And then our contractor would just get upset. And so you have to make sure that your contractor is on board with following directions, because this is going to affect your actual, not just your timeline on your flip, but it's going to affect your loan. It's going to potentially affect whether or not that company is going to want to work with you again, because if you use the same contractor all the time and that contractor does nothing but fight with their inspector, they're not going to want to deal with you on another project.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Right.
and hence we don't work with that stupid baby contractor anymore. But
Right? Yes. Big, big, big man baby.
oh my God. Yeah. Jeez. I would really like to say his name, but I'm not. It's okay. It's done.
These are the
But
things
yeah,
you learn
yeah.
in the middle of a project.
Yeah, it's because Lisa makes a good point. Every day is money. Like you are building interest on this. So you gotta like move your project in a timely manner. So if you have a goal to, put your property on the market at a certain date and it's looking like it's not, you gotta hustle. And right now, I think so the time that we're in right now, because of everything that's happened in our world, a lot of things are delayed. And it's been really, really hard for some folks that don't have a contractor that are working with subs all the time, because unfortunately, finding a good contractor is hard to find. But it also depends too on your project. Do you need a contractor or can you afford the contractor as well? So there's a lot of little elements that come into play. So when you have a hard money loan, again, you just need to get it done as quickly as possible. 6 months, like Lisa said, is usually the general kind of timeline that you should give yourself. You should be sold within the 6 month mark, because you don't want to accrue more interest than you need to.
Right, right. And every person that you have working your project in every different aspect of the project affects the others. So, I know we're talking about funding, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of confusion with all these little details, but something that I think people need to know before they get in a project is that, it's one thing that you're a good project manager, but it's another thing, like, you have to be aware of who you're hiring on your team when you're doing these projects, because if you have a contractor that refuses to cooperate, all that's going to do is cause you problems leading back to your funding.
Yeah.
Because if your project is taking far longer than it's supposed to, your lender is going to want to know why. And you can't just go, well, it's not my fault because the contractor won't cooperate, because the expectation in the industry is you hired the contractor, which means technically you're his boss, which means that he should be cooperating with you.
Yeah.
So if he's not cooperating, you need to take control of that problem. You can't just throw your hands up and say, well, I can't do anything about it. You can do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we've been in that very situation. And so when you want to think about who's on your team, because how is that going to affect my funding later? Am I going to have someone who's going to listen to me and update me? Because look, sometimes it's not necessarily the contractor's fault that things go out of sequence, because if he finds out that something you wanted was back ordered and there was no way to know that ahead of time until you placed the order for it, right?
Right.
And there's not necessarily an alternative, because sometimes either materials wise or size wise, you don't necessarily have alternatives available to you for the space that you're purchasing materials for. If that is the case, you need to have someone on your team that lets you know immediately, so that you can document, this is going to go out of sequence and we have to do this. And the reason is because this is back ordered until XYZ date. And your lender, if they are giving you construction funds, is going to need to know that information. Because if they send the inspector and your cabinetry was supposed to be in and your cabinetry is not in, they're going to say, what did you do with the money for the cabinets? Because
right.
What we gave you, and there are no cabinets.
Yep, exactly.
So if you can explain, my cabinets were on back order, here is what the invoice says, and this is what we did instead because we had the materials to do it, they can sign off on that. But you have to be able to show all of that. And the more, and so that's why Angie is saying that, like, she over documents sometimes, because you just never know. They might send a new inspector who is super, super stickler for things. And maybe the old inspector, if you did 2 or 3 projects with him, you can give him a verbal explanation. He looks around and says, yeah, that looks like it's right. And he signs off because he's worked with you before. If there's a new inspector, you can't necessarily assume that he's going to have the same attitude, right?
And know your work. And the hard money lender too also, so every hard money lender, their inspection paperwork for the inspector is different. So whenever you're that's just why they have their own budget sheets, their own kind of documentation forms and formats. What the inspector is getting on the other end may look completely different from what we are turning in. So you need to make sure that the inspector, that the hard money lender understands exactly what you have done and that it's visible. Because if it's, again, the person that's coming in to inspect has a completely different view of or set of forms that you have no privy to. So
yeah,
you have to be completely so thorough.
And pro tip, if you're going to be doing anything that gets covered up when it's done, like plumbing or something inside of the walls, and the inspector needs to sign off on that, you better take photos before you let your contractor close it up. Because if you think that they're going to be okay with your word, they're not. They make you open up a wall or reopen a trench to look at the plumbing to make sure it was done right. Because what they're trying to ensure is that you're not just taking their money and spending it on a vacation when you say that you've replaced all the plumbing in the entire house.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of, and again, the documentation part of it, and even if there's an invoice from a company, that it doesn't matter. You could have created that invoice. It's like nobody, unless they check what the company is. But the more documentation you have, the better.
Yeah,
because you can always fall back on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So all of these things put together make for a good relationship with a hard money lender that you'll be able to work with over and over again. And the more the more projects that you do successfully within the time frame expected, and so every time you deliver, essentially, you're strengthening that relationship with the lender. And over time, it becomes a little easier and a little easier to work with them because, now you've got things sort of automated and they know what to expect from you. And so they don't need to be watching you quite so closely in subsequent projects. And they can spend that time on the newer people that are coming in that they need to ensure are doing the right things. But with that comes, it comes the ease of sending a couple of emails and having funding like that, which is amazing. Because sometimes, you'll come across a property that you need to make really quick decisions on. And that given the circumstances, it may need to close very quickly. And so if you have that relationship, now that's already, a known, and you can send them over the information and they know that you know your numbers. And so they can spend, less time vetting because they know that you've already done a lot of due diligence.
Yeah, exactly.
So that works to your benefit. And, every time you work with the same person at whatever company that you're using for hard money lending, the more that you build that relationship too, and the easier things become. And then if you come to a point in a project where you do, for some reason, get into a pickle, because look, that can happen, right? Something completely unexpected can come in, happening with a flip. And if you happen to get stopped up by that, maybe it turns out that you didn't think you needed any permits for what you were going to do, but there ends up being like a structural problem that has to be fixed, that there's no way you can get around, and now you need to pull permits. That can add 30, 60 days to your project.
Yeah.
And maybe you still finish within your 6-month time frame and it's no big deal, but maybe you think you're going to go over that. And if you do, and you have this existing relationship, and right away you get on the phone or you get on email and say, hey, I'm just giving you a heads up. This is what we found. This is how long we think it may extend the project. This is, here's our reasoning why. We've documented everything. they're far more likely to say, that's not going to be a problem, we can go ahead and extend your loan,
Right.
than to say, you better figure out how to make it work within 6 months because
Yeah.
we don't know why you didn't mention this in the beginning.
Right. Because you got to be very upfront and very open with your lender. And I think that building that relationship, so that they know you and know how you work, and should there be an emergency, they should be the ones to know. And just to clarify too, I just wanted to make sure to make this point. So hard money lender is not like a person out there that's like giving out all this money. So you are talking to a like an agent, or it's almost like a broker, so somebody that is overseeing a fund or funds that people have put money into. So it could be like $100 million fund, we don't know. So that is what we are applying to. So essentially you are taking somebody else's money that you do not know to work on your projects. That individual or individuals have taken their trust into this particular hard money lender entity for them to go ahead and process and review and really, really take care of their money to be put into our projects. Does that make sense?
Totally. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's super helpful because that clarifies the fact that hard money lenders are not being difficult. They're not
Right.
being sticklers for no reason, because this isn't like the bank where there's all kinds of, the bank has all of these insurances and all of these things. Like when people lose the bank's money, it's a very different situation.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right to go out and intentionally lose the bank's money, but
Yeah.
when it happens,
Right.
the bank has many, many protections in place that a hard money lender doesn't have, because this isn't federal funds, this isn't government-backed funds, this isn't insured funds. This is a pool, essentially, of private people's money that they have invested and allowed this firm to vet people to appropriately invest in different projects, and then they get a return on their money. So yeah, it's a very different. So the reason that hard money lenders are as careful as they are is because they absolutely need to be responsible for
Yeah.
each of the individual people who have put into the pool of funds.
Yeah, exactly. So just because I know that when I first started, I was like, oh, a hard money lender. I thought it was like one office, one person, and then I started to learn, because you learn as you go. No, this is like this is different funds, and that money can be coming from different funds for me. And once you look at the paperwork and you get your, some loan paperwork is like this thin, another loan paperwork is like this thick.
Yeah.
It just depends. And I would suggest, let me read it. And you should read it, because there's a lot of little nuances and things that you wouldn't even think of that would come up. It's interesting. And I know that little things, all kinds of requirements are based off of lessons learned for some of these lenders.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's another really important point is, reading through the paperwork so that you understand what you're committing to and what is expected of you is also, part of this when you're looking to fund a project. Because the idea is that, so this is a business. I've listened to a lot of people talk about flipping, and I find it interesting that a lot of people talk about it, in my opinion, irresponsibly, because they go, oh, I just want to try to do a flip and I want to see if I make money. You want to see if you make money. I mean, unless you have a whole bunch of money sitting in the bank on your own, that you're just going to buy a house and you're going to fund the whole thing on your own and see if you make money. Like, you can do that because that's your money and you can do whatever you want with your money. But when you have to borrow money in order to make the project work, nobody should be coming into this with the attitude of, I'm just going to see if I can make money on a flip. And some people will even say, I want to learn how to do it, so if I break even, it's fine. That is a huge risk. making the assumption that you might be able to break even, because if your projection on the project is simply to break even, and then an unknown happens in the project, your break even suddenly turns into negative.
Yeah.
That's not your money. You just lost somebody else's money. So that means that that needs to come out of your pocket to make that whole. Or what I see more frequently, we've seen often, is people just walk away from the project and they never finish it. They let it foreclose, which is horribly irresponsible.
Yeah.
And not the way that anyone should be looking to do or to learn about fix and flip. That should never ever. So if you're coming into it going, as long as I break even, it's fine, you're not ready to do a flip.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You have to finish the project. And even if you lose money, because I've gotten bitten in the ass twice where I didn't make any money. But we finished it because first and foremost, you have a responsibility to pay that money back to your investors and to your hard money lender.
Yes.
So, oh well, like suck it. So that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
We hope that it doesn't happen to anybody. We hope that, but again, if things go wrong, if your contractor walks away from the project, so any of those kinds of things can happen.
Yeah.
So, and although some people are like, it's never happened. Don't ever say never say never, because it's a fluke. Something like Lisa said, all kinds of emergencies can happen. Something just a fire could happen. You don't know, so there's something to take into consideration that yes, the responsibility factor is massive.
Yeah. So have a plan B and a plan C, because the idea is that if you're looking to fund a project, those funds, it's a non-negotiable that those funds have to be paid back. So that means if the project goes sideways somehow, there needs to be a plan in place to get all the funds paid back. And then you figure out what it is that you do to fix the project itself after you've ensured that the money can be paid.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, we've talked about hard money lenders, which is the first sort of, type of lending that you're likely to look into if you're going to do a project.
Right.
And we also utilize private funds. And so what we mean by private funds is literally other people's money. So this could be colleagues that we know. This could be, friends, family members, anyone that you know that has either, say, money sitting in a savings account that isn't doing anything for them. Or maybe they have money in a 401k or some type of IRA or something that they are able to control, that's self-directed. If they have something like that, they're able to roll those funds out, give it to you to work on a project, collect the money back with their interest. They've made a profit on it, and that goes back into their retirement fund. And I know that there are definitely people that go, why in the world would anybody just give you money to do a flip? Well, so I can tell you why. Private money lenders exist because the interest that they can make with traditional investing oftentimes isn't anywhere near as good as the return that they can get on a short-term project like a real estate rehab project. And so usually we pay, like anywhere from, I would say, 8 to 12% regularly to a private money lender. And in the past, we've paid much higher than that. Number one, because the market cycle allowed and we could afford to pay a higher interest rate. And number two, because when you're new, again, you have to offer people something that is really motivating to them. And so if you're looking at getting a fantastic interest rate in a short period of time, they're more willing to take that risk to get that good return.
Yeah.
So, we've worked with a number of different interest rates, and as the cycle changes and as the landscape changes for what's happening in the real estate market, you might have to adjust those numbers over time. But whatever you're doing is typically going to be more than any return that they're getting with their money, just sitting in the bank. And so
Yeah.
that's why people will often utilize their private funds in order to make a return. Because if they can do this multiple times a year, so say you have a great reputation and usually you finish a flip in 3 or 4 months, get it sold, and they can lend to you, say 3 or 4 times throughout the year when you're doing those projects, they've gotten a ridiculous amount of return. If you're giving them 10% and you've done that 4 times over the course of the year, because that's about, the length of time that your projects allow, right? They've just made a ridiculous return on their
Yeah.
money, and they're very pleased, and you got a good percentage rate and you were able to complete your projects. So that creates a win-win. And
Yeah.
go ahead,
Go ahead.
Angie, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I think for the new investors that come in, or the new private funders, that try to educate them as they're going, as your project is going, and updates and things, to make them feel comfortable and know that the project is moving along and things that are happening. Same thing with your hard money lender. As you're telling them what's going on, you tell your private funder as well. Some people, again, some private funders care. Other private funders are like, just call me when it's done.
Yeah.
But yeah, the return on some of these projects, like I sometimes, I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of where the money's at, to be honest. If you have a chunk of money and somebody is willing to give you 12%, for 6 months, on a chunk of change, like that's quite a bit for you to make up in 6 months.
Yeah.
And like Lisa said, if there's like about, 4 projects per year, that's massive. You're not going to see that in a savings account. Stock market is, I don't even know. So the stock market, I don't even really know what the stock market, I know. It's like, sometimes it does really, really well, but I know that I've had some investors that have come in and they're like, yeah, we're going to kind of just not even think about the stock market right now and just do other things. Because no matter what, I think the real estate market, even though people talk about, bubble this and bubble that, and they're like, the market's going to slow down, versus the market will be the market no matter what. Like, people are going to buy a home no matter what. So it may slow down, but again, you adjust the rates, but it will eventually, it picks up again. So it just, and it depends on kind of project that you're doing as well. So, but again, the reputation comes in a massive factor in all of this. People have to trust you, and you have to make sure that you pay your people back. Yeah, it's just, that's the biggest thing out of everything. So make sure you pay your people back.
100%. We have witnessed quite a few deals where people did not get paid back. And that's not the way, like, that's the fastest way to kill your real estate business. You simply, it's not an option.
No,
it's not an option. So, yeah, when I know that for us, when we borrow private money, at the beginning, I always explain about the project, what I think the duration is going to be, obviously the returns that we expect to see and the length of time that we think the project is going to be. I give them, kind of a full scope of what it is that we're intending to do, again, for their comfort level. And so they know exactly what type of project their money is going into, and they can feel confident that all the numbers look good and the projections look good. And then I always make the offer that if they ever would like to come to the project and see progress, they're more than welcome to contact me and meet me at the project, and I'll show them everything that's going on. Or if they would like me to take pictures and send them pictures throughout the project, I'm happy to do that. And like Angie said, some lenders are really interested in what's happening and they like to see the progress that makes them feel more comfortable and confident. Others are like, I don't care. Just let me know when you're closing and my check is ready.
Right.
And that's fine too. Because again, as long as they're getting what you promised, they're happy. And then, you know, you check in with them on, do you want to do another project? I have another one lined up. And that's how you build that relationship. So the same thing, as a hard money lender, you need to have a good track record. You need to treat people's money with respect. You need to follow through with everything that you say you're going to do. And if something gets in the way, you need to be willing to do whatever you have to do to remedy that.
Yes. And quickly.
Yes.
As fast as possible.
As fast as possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think something that comes along with this whole thing is, again, I know I said this at the beginning, but knowing your numbers is really, really important here, because I've had a couple of, so I've actually had 2 projects that were condo projects. And now I personally love condos because they're usually what we call lipstick flips, which means that you don't do anything structural. And so they're easy because all you're doing is cosmetic stuff. But you can get a lot of bang for your buck. However, we've had 2 condos that, because of the type of neighborhood that they were in and the fact that they hadn't seen a retail sale in quite a while, we took pretty serious haircuts on appraisals when we went to sell. And so even though we projected our numbers correctly, and even in one of the areas, there were several condo complexes that were basically, it was even the same builder, like everything about it was the same. And one of the complexes down the road had comps that had sold recently, but our particular complex didn't have any comps for like 2 or 3 years back. And our appraiser for that refused to use the comps in the place down the road, even though it was the same builder, the same condos, you know, a couple blocks away. So essentially it's the same neighborhood, the same everything. In that appraiser's estimation, those comps didn't count. And so he would not appraise the project for the price that we thought it would sell at. And we took a $12,000 haircut on it. You know, and that's significant. Now, had that been our only available profit, guess what? We don't make any profit. Everybody gets paid back and we don't make anything.
We don't make anything.
Which is why your numbers are really important, and which is why you have to have spread. And this is why your lenders, both of them, so if your private money knows about flipping, they're going to look at things the way that a hard money lender does. Not every private money person knows about flipping, and some of them may just take your word for it. But the hard money lender is going to look at, what does your spread look like? What kind of profit do you look like you're going to make? Because if the profit's really, really skinny, there's a high likelihood that lenders aren't going to want to risk that, because it's fairly easy to get a low appraisal, or, you know, if you're doing a flip in the middle of summer for the AC to go out right in the middle of the flip, that's like $8,000 to replace an AC potentially. You know, if you're gonna, like, if your profit for yourself is 10 and you just blew 8 of it because the AC went out the window,
yeah, that's rough.
You know, you're not in good shape there. So those numbers are really, really important, because that's going to directly affect your lending power, and, you know, whether or not you're going to get repeat business from both hard and private money. You know, because your project has to be profitable, and it has to be safe, and risk has to be mitigated.
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be enough. Who was it that called it? There has to be meat on the bone for everybody. So that's the person that is selling it to you, one first, and then yourself. You know, obviously the profit that you're going to make, but then it's all the interest rates and the closing costs and the oops factors, and it's so much. Like, your cushion needs to be there. And I'm also, as we've done this for so long now, like, we also take into account now a cushion in the beginning, because like Lisa said, like, that the rehab funds that your hard money lender is going to give you, this doesn't necessarily just appear, you know, the first week that you start work. You should probably have something to start working with. It might not give you anything.
Right.
So trying to kind of, you know, obviously you need to pay yourself as well. You're not doing this for free. So we made that mistake in the beginning where we would borrow enough to do the project, but we didn't take into account our time, especially for the guys that were actually working on the property.
Yes.
So again, so yes, definitely having a cushion and things for when you start, but and even with and that's when sometimes the investor, the gap funding, the private funding comes in.
Mhm.
Um, again, just working your numbers and making sure. I know that there's been times where people have done like a mini, like a not a mini, but like a pre-appraisal before they
Mhm.
even start. I mean, it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Having an appraiser on in your pocket is a good thing to have, because there is some, there. I do think at some point maybe we should have somebody, an appraiser, come on and talk, because it is interesting the way, because they have their own, and yeah, there's so many topics that we can talk about,
I
but
know.
there's they do have certain requirements that they need to follow for an appraisal. So it sucks when they can't. Why wouldn't he use the condo complex 2 blocks away? Like,
Right.
why? And it's not like, they're not really readily answer. I've hardly ever found any appraiser that's actually on open, because I think there are a lot of regulations that they have to follow.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, same thing happened to us in Apache Junction, the property that we sold so fast. And that one, it was so fast. I was like, we were in there like a month tops, the whole project. But same thing. Thank God we had a massive spread. We still made, over 30, I think, or about just over 30. But we took like a 10 grand hit because nothing had sold in that particular little area in the last year or two.
Yeah.
So and I kept thinking, I'm like, I'm gonna beat this appraiser. Get another appraiser out there. It would be the same thing. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, you have to be prepared, and it all comes down to numbers.
Yes. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of those factors circle all the way back around to affect, essentially your lending on the project, because your ability to make sure that everything gets paid back and paid back on time
Mm-hmm.
is probably the most important piece of the project. Now, that's not to say that lenders won't give you an extension, because guess what? They make more money if they do, right?
Right.
If, here's the thing, both hard money and private money lenders are in a position where that money may not necessarily be earmarked to be out for an unlimited amount of time. Hard money lenders, like Angie said earlier, have a fund. And the reason that they do typically 6-month terms is because they're supposed to be turning short-term projects over.
Yeah.
And there may be people who put their money into the fund and then expect to take it back out at a certain point in time. If that lender has to go to them and say, you can't take your money out because it's still being used, and we didn't anticipate it was going to be used, that could cause a problem for them. And the same thing with your private money lenders. If they're thinking, well, I'll do this shorter term investment, and then I want to roll it into this other thing over here that I have plans for. Or maybe even if they don't have plans, it may just make them nervous
Yeah.
to hear that you need an extension when you were certain that you were able to get it done in a particular amount of time. So those things matter. And so again, you can mitigate them as much as possible, and they might come, and happen anyway. And it's all in how you handle it, and how much information you give and how well you communicate it, and what you're doing to make it all work in the end, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So those are all important things to take into consideration. And I'm certain that there are probably some people who are thinking, well, how do you even begin to raise this money, right? So how do you find hard money lenders, and then how do you find private money lenders? And so, again, we had mentors
Mm-hmm.
that had resources with hard money. Now, I mean, you can literally Google hard money lenders in your area and you can bet, that they're legit by, really checking out their website and, giving them a phone call and talking to them about what their processes are, and things like that. They
Yeah.
should have a physical location somewhere. Um, but I would say that the best way to find lenders is referral based, especially for hard money,
Yep.
because then you get and the opportunity to ask whoever you're getting the referral from, can you tell me what it's like to work with them? Can you tell me what their expectations are? What did you like and not like?
Hmm.
And you can have those conversations, and then they may even have an agent at that firm that they can refer you directly to, and that can work in your favor too. So I really like referrals for hard money, and anyone, even if you're just getting started, even just going to like networking groups, or getting into meetup or Facebook groups where there are other investors that have more experience, you can ask around in those areas and people will talk about who they use locally.
Yeah. My suggestion is asking around referrals and then just kind of researching them a little bit. And just, how easy are they to work with? Are they nice to newbies? Some are not.
Summer.
So, it's just kind of you have to make sure that you do your research. And if somebody can vouch for you, I think that's even better, because then they can do an introduction for you, or this is why we say, like, don't go at it alone. Like, you should definitely have a partner, and a partner that has done things before, just so that you can kind of get that lead in. Because it'll make your life a lot easier in regards to the entire, I guess, world of real estate investing. Because
It will.
it's for every resources that those folks that have history, and a good history. I mean, if you can latch on to any of that, it's really good. But again, it's just, you have to work with integrity. You don't ruin somebody's reputation. You recommended somebody and they totally, they didn't do what they said they were supposed to do. That's happened to me.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm thinking, why did should I have suggested that? I didn't know, I I thought that they would perform. They didn't. So yeah, it's it can be rough out there.
It can be,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah, so I agree. Referral based is fantastic, and I feel like it's a win-win potentially, because if that person can vouch for you, that can help you to get a good relationship going, better interest rates, all of those things, and then also if you know that a colleague has already worked with this company and you know what to expect, you're less likely to get hit with some things that you don't really know how to handle. So I do like referrals. Now, private money is a little bit different. Private money is likely to come from someone that you have an existing relationship with. Because if you
Mhm.
think about, a stranger that has some money to put out there to get a return on and do a project, there's a lot of trust that needs to be there and they need to understand what you're doing. If you're dealing with someone that you already have a relationship with and they know for a fact that you are good at managing projects, that you are that you have integrity and you follow through with what you say you're going to do, um, that makes it easier for them to make the decision to loan that money.
Yeah.
And it can also be tricky because for some people, like you want to have a relationship, but maybe not a super close relationship. Some people have shared that they've had really frustrating experiences by having like the in-laws or their parents loan money because they get so nervous and they want to know what's going on all the time. Or maybe it's somebody that doesn't know anything about real estate, but they want to be involved in your project. And that can be really tricky because you can't have someone who doesn't understand what's going on with the real estate project interjecting their opinion and saying, well, the only reason that I'm going to give you money to put towards this is because I want to, I want to be able to control part of the project. My
Right.
suggestion would be, if someone wants to control part of the project, they better be an investor and a real estate investor and know about how the projects work and have some experience themselves. Otherwise, it should be more or less hands off.
Yeah.
That can cause you, some heartache down the road if you're not in agreement with what you need to do with the project. So you want to have an existing relationship, but you want to be careful who it is.
And also, and you will, because there are some folks that I'm like, I don't think I would. It's already stressful what you're doing and what you're going through, and trying to get something done as quickly as you can in a short amount of span amount of time. That somebody kind of asking you and asking you and asking you and asking you what is happening does not serve you well at all. So for those cases, I think you should know, just do somebody that either has experience or trusts you enough to know that you're going to get it off the ground and you're going to sell it and you're going to give them back their money with whatever interest you promised. End of story. And that's it. It's not worth it. It's not, and it's a strain on the relationship too. So especially if you're friends or if you're family, it's rough. Like, yes, just don't do it.
Yeah. So definitely a word of caution for that.
Mhm.
Know who you're dealing with. Know the personality type of who you're dealing with. Don't be so desperate to do a project that you'll take anyone's money who comes along. If you have that nagging sensation in the back of your mind that like, this person's going to be difficult to work with, but I need the money for this project. In my opinion, it's better to bypass a project and do something different until you find the right people to work with, then get into a project with people who are going to be difficult because you just made your own job harder. And you have
Yeah.
a lot to manage if you're doing a flip. If you're doing project management yourself, and then you're also babysitting a private lender that's being really difficult, that's taking time out of your project management schedule, to deal with that. And so know the personality type of the person that you're dealing with. Know when to say no.
Mhm.
Think, but no, I actually already have someone lined up. Maybe we'll work on the next project. Like, that's perfectly fine to say that. And also, you need to be overly communicative with certain people. Like, you need to give them all of the information that they need, because for some people, if you communicate well enough in the beginning and they feel comfortable, then they're like, okay, you've totally got this, do what you need to do. But if you're
Yeah.
like evasive and you're not returning their phone calls or their emails and they're not understanding what's going on, they're going to start getting nervous. And then once they get nervous, now you have a problem. So
Right.
don't create that yourself by not communicating appropriately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just again, open and honest. That's all you can do. And sometimes, yeah, projects are gonna be delayed, and it sucks.
Yeah.
What do you do? Just, this is what it is, and this is what we're doing to rectify it, or we're going as fast as we can. You
Yeah.
know, fingers crossed, everything turns out okay, and that's
Yeah.
what we're doing. Some people are really great with it, and some people are not. But again, you're doing the best that you can to the best of your abilities, and then some.
Yeah.
But again, just open and honest. Open and honest with
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah. Get out ahead of it is the best thing that you can do. And also explaining, be real clear with what the risks are from the beginning. So I always tell my private money lenders, I give them a projection. This is how long we think it's going to take. This is how long we think it's going to be on the market. I give them all of the data that I've already collected. And then I let them know, if this is not the case due to XYZ, this is what we have planned.
Yeah.
If this situation happens to come up, this is what we have planned. And so I let them know that I'm already thinking about that. And usually they're pretty satisfied with the fact that I've just thought it through, and that I have a plan, so that, like, if something happens where, all of a sudden we have something that's on the market way longer than we thought, or, if we thought we sold it and the lending falls through on the buyer's end and we need to go all the way back to the beginning, I can speak to those things.
Yeah.
And if I can let them know that those are possibilities and what we have plans for, usually they're like, oh, okay, I can understand that. And then if it does come up, they've already been prepped for it. So it's like it doesn't feel like a crisis. But
Right.
if you don't mention those things and then you come back later and say, well, this is actually what's going on now, and you aren't making a big deal out of it, but they feel like it's a big deal because they didn't know it was a possibility, you might have just like accidentally created what feels like a crisis to them when it's not, but you didn't prepare them either.
Yeah.
So those things are important when you're using other people's money, because they need to understand that you're equipped to deal with whatever you need to deal with to get their money back and their profit.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too. Yeah. Just try to give them the big picture of what it's really going to look like, what we expect, so that you can always fall back on that. Like, remember I said this might happen, so it did happen. So this is what we're doing, or this is what we're going to do, and kind of go through those steps. But yeah, it's kind of, but again, it's just, you never know. It is a risk, but hopefully, you're a safe risk. If you've done your numbers and if you've done your research and you have all your resources lined up, you should be good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to finding private lenders, actually, the same thing can go for hard money lenders. You may want to visit some networking groups and some meetups and things like that, because sometimes people who are real estate investors are literally just investors. And they're just looking for projects to invest their money in, but they don't necessarily want to be hands-on. So those people exist, even if you're thinking like, there's nobody in my family that would lend, or I don't know anybody that would be interested in doing this. It doesn't mean that you can't meet other people who aren't interested in doing that. You just have to tap into the right areas to find those people. And the same thing, you may get referrals. So maybe you have a colleague that doesn't have a property lined up right now, and they have a lender that's like, hey, do you have anything? I want to do something. And they can say, well, no, but my friend has this project over here. Would you like to lend with them? I will vouch for them, because that happens frequently too. And then once you've sort of built that, and you get momentum going and you're doing projects, you will be surprised because people will come to you and say, what are you doing? And how can I get involved in that?
Yeah.
And then you can cultivate a sort of list of people that are really interested. And those are probably going to be people when you're working on projects, you post your stuff on social media. You take your pictures of your project and you post your process and you show how you're progressing along the way. People are really interested in seeing that. And then once they see what you're doing, they might come to you and say, I've always wanted to invest in a project like that. I didn't know how to find anybody.
Yeah. Here you are.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So you just build momentum and build momentum.
Yeah.
And you reuse your resources, and always be networking for new resources as well. And the more of a track record that you can put together, and the more you can show that you've done and speak to it in a way where people understand what you're talking about, the easier that all gets. It's just building it over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have to say about funding. Do you have anything left to add?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. Like I said, I think at one point, to have an appraiser come on, or maybe to even evaluate a property and run numbers and things, or past projects, to go through and how was it funded, how did it do, how, the whole thing would be essential.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I know I have some spreadsheets I can dig out that we can go over on past projects for sure. So
Yep. And or delve more into the hard money loan thing. How do you the draws? What do they look like? What do you
yes,
document and all of that?
absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. So we've got some good stuff that we can continue to work with to show you guys. And I don't see any comments at the moment, but if anybody watches on a replay later on and you guys want to ask questions, you can still type in comments at that point and we'll be able to go and look at them and get back to you. And then we will be back with another episode. I believe we're scheduled for Monday as long as nothing pops up project-wise that that is essential to be handled.
TBD, yes. Today I spent 4 hours on the road finding one box of tile. I was telling Lisa, because I couldn't, there's 2 boxes of this particular tile in all of Phoenix. I found one. We still need the other one, maybe, or maybe our tile guy can make it work. But yeah, it was fun, you know, all morning long from one end of the city to the other, trying to figure it out. So yes, so we'll see. We'll for sure let you know by Monday morning what's up.
Absolutely. Sounds good. So everybody, if you could keep your fingers crossed for Angie that they get the rest of the tile that they need, that would be helpful, because sometimes this is how it goes with projects.
Oh, I know. Sometimes the machine that provided the tile or that cut the tile was 1/8 a little bigger, so it threw off the entire surround on a shower because one box was wrong. And not our fault, the manufacturing. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't have known that. Couldn't have known that. So yeah, those are the kind of left field sort of things that we deal with on occasion.
Yeah. Yes. It's all good. As long as it looks good, and it does look really good. So I'm excited for it. I'll show some pictures tomorrow. I'll post some pictures tomorrow of that project.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
That'll be great. All right. So thank you everybody for watching. And again, leave any comments that you'd like or questions that you would like to have answered and we'll get back to you. And we will see you next week. Everyone enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yes.
And stay safe.
Stay safe.
We'll see you all soon.
All right. Bye guys. Thank you.